The first place Jacksonville Jaguars completely embarrassed and effectively ended the Colts' hopes and dreams after their 7-1 start, and the Jaguars now sit in 9-4 and control their own destiny. After already smashing this year's expectations and effectively locking a playoff spot, the question now becomes how much can the Jaguars build off of their momentum and how special can this season actually become? Up next is a team that the Jaguars should beat pretty easily, and even though after an emotional win this could be seen as a letdown or a trap game, でも全く心配してないんだよ。ニューヨークジェッツだから始めようか。Welcome back to Jags Japan, where we talk all things Jacksonville Jaguars, Japan, and anything in between, and I'm just a guy. And right now it is the Week 15 preview show, and we're going to go through it all. We're going to talk about that satisfying beatdown of the Colts. We're going to go around the league and kind of the playoff picture, see how far the Jags could potentially go, maybe go through some playoff scenarios or something like that. I know that's always fun. And as always, I'll go on my Trevor Lawrence rant of the week. And then break down this game against the Jets and give a score prediction as always. And I'll be honest, guys, I really didn't think the Jaguars would be here at this point, that we would make it this far, that I'd be doing this show this far in with this much enthusiasm, with this much kind of excitement for the rest of the season. It just feels weird to be talking at Week 15 and be talking like playoff locks, possible seeding changes, possibility of winning out our schedule and being one of the top seeds in the AFC. And this is all in a season that we're going into just hoping for some competitive football, that we'd be happy with maybe 8 or 9 wins. At least for me, if they got to 8 wins, I thought the season was a success. Now, obviously, when we start off 4-1 and everything, you should have grander expectations. But to be in the hunt this far and to really be in the driver's seat for your own destiny, this season, I thought realistically going into my preview for the season, I thought, the Jags season might be over by week 16 in Denver, which would have been much better than the usual Jags seasons when the season's usually over by Halloween. But the Jags really outdid themselves this year so far. We still have a long way to go. Things change so much on a weekly basis. I mean, last week we were talking about hopefully squeaking by the Colts and maybe just keeping up some momentum for maybe a playoff push, maybe the division. After that win, after effectively knocking out the Colts, we're talking about, are we going to get 12 wins, 13 wins? What's cool is that I can guarantee you that the people, the men in the meetings, right, in the Jaguars facilities aren't talking about that. And I think that's what's really cool about this team right now. And all they're talking about right now is the upcoming week against the Jets, and how they're going to continue going 1-0 every week. That's something special that the Jaguars have kind of set their season up at this point. We no longer have to scoreboard watch the Texans or the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Colts every week trying to see, who's doing what? Is the Chargers going to win? Now it really doesn't matter. If the Jaguars just take care of the winnable games left on their schedule, we could look up and see a 12-win season. And kind of, that's what the Jags have shown me more than anything this year, is that they're finally just a normal NFL team that can just play competitive football with anyone. And I think really has a shot to kind of win any game that they're in. The Jaguars can win the Super Bowl this year. I know that sounds crazy to think, but we know that we haven't seen any kind of dominant team come from the AFC or NFC. The closest that we got is maybe the Seahawks or the Rams, and even then the Rams will still lose a fluky game to the Panthers. Like, really anything can happen this year. So I think while the iron's hot, while you have momentum, you have to build on that. And though I'm not saying, I'm expecting the Jaguars to win the Super Bowl or even make a deep playoff run or even win out the rest of their schedule, I think it is safe to assume that they will be competitive in every game, at least. And that's something that you couldn't have said for a lot of Jaguars teams last year or even in like some of the good years like 2022. It's probably going to take a while for the league to still kind of figure out that the Jaguars can actually be a competitive team. I guarantee that the Broncos in week 16 are probably still seeing the Jags come to town and kind of expecting to show up and win that game. And that could really be an advantage for the Jaguars. And I don't blame the Broncos for thinking that. They're a really good team as well. And they've probably had Jacksonville week 16 marked as a win off for the last, 3-4 months before the season's started and when the schedule probably came out. But I don't think for a second that the Jaguars can't go up to Denver and win that game, and even win it handily, as we've seen. One thing I believe is an underrated story over the past month is that 3 out of the last 4 opponents Jaguars have blown out. 2 of them being playoff teams, and the one game that the Jaguars didn't blow out their opponent, they won a tough, gritty game on the road in overtime. Which is tough to do in the NFL usually. So not only are they taking care of business when they face a lesser opponent in the last month, they're also dominating teams that are supposed to be competitive playoff teams. Who says they can't go up to Denver and win that game? I think the Jaguars are a good team. Despite, I think I was watching CBS Sports, Pete Prisco, who I love, by the way. I love Pete Prisco on Jaguars Monday and everything. But he said that no one in the NFL is good right now. And I think what he means is no one in the NFL is a dominant team. We don't have a Chiefs or the Eagles of years past where they're going to go 15-2 and it's a lock for the championship game or the Super Bowl. It's all so wide open. But I do think the Jaguars are a good football team. I think they're one of, what you could say, the 4 or 5 really good teams in the AFC. I think they've proved it. I think their record proves it. 9-4, 3rd seed in the AFC. I think the quality of their wins prove it. They haven't had the easiest schedule in the NFL like the Patriots have had. The Patriots are a good team, but and they've had some signature wins, no doubt. I remember at Buffalo, that was a great win. But also, how good is Buffalo? That's kind of every team we look at, there's always but they've had some bad losses, or we don't know how easy or hard their schedule was really. The Jaguars, they had 2 bad losses, but they were against Super Bowl teams in the NFC. And that's also back in October, when the Jaguars didn't really have an identity, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I believe now they do. I believe it's really easy to look at the Jaguars and say they're an incredibly well-balanced team on offense. Their quarterback's hot right now. ETN has been playing extremely consistent. All of their receivers can make plays. Their offensive line is physical, and on the defense, physical, number 1 run defense in the NFL, and they force turnovers. And they proved it again that they were legit on Sunday. This isn't just some... I was saying for a little bit, I think maybe they're the number 1 run defense in the NFL because people are so happy to pass on them. But when you have the Colts come in and Jonathan Taylor, the Colts are the number 1 rushing offense, and you have the number 1 running back in the NFL come in and hold him to 74 yards. I think that kind of proves that, hey, we can stop the run, even good running teams. And then obviously force turnovers, 2 more interceptions on the day. And then on offense, even with Parker Washington out, who's been the most consistent thing on offense outside of ETN, they're clicking and looking smooth the past 2 weeks as I think they have all season. Right at the right time, things are clicking for the Jaguars. They're getting healthier and should continue to get healthier down the stretch, given anything catastrophic happening. But anyways, let's get into that game against the Colts. True statement game. We'll get to the positives first because there are a lot of them. And, I don't want to hear any excuses. Oh, but Daniel Jones went out. Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. He was already on one leg when he came in the game. And the Colts were already reeling. The Jaguars defense already shut down the run at one point, and they already picked him off and were up 14-7 before the injury happened. They did go down and score a touchdown pretty handily on a nice 11-play drive early in the game, but the Colts offense has been historically great this year, especially earlier in the season. They were gonna get theirs eventually, and the Jaguars defense also, it's not like there's some crazy shutdown defense. They're good to give up a few drives a game. So I believe if Jones was playing or not, I think the Jaguars do still handily win that game. And I liked how even when Jones went out, the backup came in. I was a little worried because, oh no, backup quarterback, Jaguars, oh no, here we go again. But they continued to kind of put their necks on the throats, went on, continued to get turnovers, put up 36 points to put the game well out of reach. Obviously, what happened to Daniel Jones sucks for him, obviously, in the Colts. I hope he recovers and comes back next season healthy, especially that he was on a 1-year deal. Bet on himself. You could really see that frustration, slamming his helmet in the ground. So that sucks for him, but I hope he gets back healthy. He's really had a great year. But the defense was awesome in this game, so I'm going to give them praise first. You could really tell that they took stopping the run personally. It was like they heard it all week, and all they wanted to do was kind of shut everyone up about Jonathan Taylor and the best run game in the NFL. You can tell they have a lot of pride in stopping the run. Guys like Devon Hamilton, Trayvon Walker, Devin Lloyd, Foye Luakon, attacking the line of scrimmage, showing the league the number one rushing defense is for real. And my favorite play for the defense in the game was actually the 4th-and-1 stop at midfield right before halftime. At this point, Riley Leonard was in the backup for the Colts, and I believe the score at the time, I think the Jaguars might have been up by 15 or maybe up by 11. Either way, the Colts did have a little bit of momentum. Tootin just fumbled there, which is like the one thing you can't do right now in this game. Colts drive down a little bit, and it's a 4th-and-1. Everyone knows what's going on there. Everyone knows they're handing it off to Jonathan Taylor. They're trying to enforce your will in your stadium, and Jaguars said no. Shut that play down. Lloyd and Walker coming downhill. Matt Dickerson and Devon Hamilton both getting push up the middle and shut it down. Completely demoralized the Colts, I think, from that point on, showing them that they just, they're not going to come in here and just ride Jonathan Taylor's back to victory again. Speaking of Devin Lloyd, my second favorite play of the game was actually the interception on the first play. One, because I thought it was a brilliant play call by Coach Camp, and even better execution by Lloyd to execute the play and get the interception. But it just felt like the defense kind of knew exactly what it needed to do early on in that game, because I think it's no secret that the formula for the Colts' success all season has been using the threat of Jonathan Taylor to create huge open downfield passes off of play action pass. And doing that, they usually establish a dominant early lead in the game, and then the rest of the game, they ride Jonathan Taylor, and bleed clock and dominate time of possession. Like I've always said, you look up halfway through the second quarter and it's like 21-3, and it's like, okay, well, now we can't run the ball. The whole game plan gets thrown out the window. Meanwhile, the Colts are just bleeding clock with Jonathan Taylor. And I was begging for someone who played the Colts to kind of take that out. The Texans did it last week, and the Jaguars did it this week by causing literally a turnover on the first play on defense. I was just begging, can someone just keep them from scoring 14 points in the first two drives? That's exactly what happened. The Jags knew that. I think I even watched an interview with Devin Lloyd where he said, or maybe it was Foye, it was one of the two, where they said they literally knew that the Colts were going to do that play on the first or second play of the game, and that's why they called that. They know that the Colts on the opening drives have been using play action a ton, and because everyone's so committed to stopping Jonathan Taylor that everyone gets up on the line and they do a quick little dump out or a screen or whatever over to one of their receivers for a big gain, and that's how they keep rolling. But I love how they kind of adjusted to that and got the interception and kind of disrupted the Colts' entire game plan and rhythm right out the gate. And enforced their will instead. The Jaguars, I like what they said in the broadcast, out-colted the Colts. Instead of the Colts being up, 14, 21, 7 or whatever, the Jaguars were actually up that much before half. So awesome. I love how they adjusted to the rookie quarterback as well. Sometimes when a backup quarterback comes in, they usually have a decent amount of success because the defense maybe isn't prepared for that style of play, or maybe the backup just kind of has like that no pressure on them. They can just come in and perform because nobody's expecting the backup to come in and like do anything crazy. Meanwhile, the starter has all the expectations on them. So sometimes they just let it fly, and you could tell Riley Leonard was just kind of like just playing backyard football out there a few times. And I think he played pretty admirably actually for his first NFL action. But I did like how the defense didn't break. They didn't let the Colts back in that game. And huge shout out for Josh Hines-Allen continuing to be dominant for the defensive line, also fighting through injury. Trayvon Walker and Arik Armstead coming in having a good game as well. Switching over to the positives on the offensive side, and I mean, where do I start? I mean, I'll save the QB for later, but I just want to give huge love to the offensive line first. I don't believe Trevor even got touched in that game, let alone pressure. And I think they showed some really dominant run blocking early, especially on the touchdown to ETN. That was a perfect play design by Cohen and perfect execution by the pulling guards, by Hainsey getting out in front and setting that up. And, when the line can play like that, really opens up everything on this offense. Another awesome game from ETN on the ground. He's getting close to his third 1,000-yard season. And I think he's going to make it hard for the Jags not to pay him after the season. That's going to be a pretty big decision because I don't know if I fully trust Tootin and Allen to really take over the reins. I think unless the Jaguars draft, some stud running back in the second or third round next year or something like that, or if ETN is asking for too much, I don't think there's a reason why not to bring him back. I know you never pay the running back, but when the running back's that good and that reliable and a true team guy, I don't see why not. It's not like it's going to cost you too much, in my opinion. And then the receiving game, I think it's awesome to see BTJ making plays like he did last year. Only 3 catches, but all 3 were extremely impactful down the field plays, game-changing plays, making tough catches. That's what we thought we were getting. And I think Liam Cohen, with the addition of Jacoby Myers, really changed his outlook on BTJ. I think he has put BTJ in what De'Ami Brown was supposed to play. I think coming to the season, Liam Cohen thought BTJ was really like Justin Jefferson or Mike Evans. Like, we're going to use him in every single way. And I think he proved early and through the middle of the season that he's just not that guy right now. Maybe he can be, he could develop into that. But we need something more sure thing over the middle, doing all the dirty work, going in the slot, doing the whole route tree that Jacoby Myers can do. Now that we have a guy like that, now that we have him and Parker Washington, who are very reliable on those routes, De'Ami Brown was come in just to be the deep threat, basically, to run those speed sweeps and to do deep threat stuff. And I don't think that De'Ami Brown has caught a single deep ball this year, and they've tried. I don't know if it's just he can't get separation, he's just not on the same page with Trevor, but I think they put BTJ in that role this week, and that showed like crazy. The one-handed one obviously was awesome, but also on the second drive, that seam route, that was a tough one. Holding on to that for the third catch later in the game was also pretty special. And I think it's really important that it just gives BTJ more confidence, and that we see Trevor putting a lot of trust in him now too. And then speaking of Trevor, let's get to the Trevor Lawrence rant of the week. And we have a good one today. Another positive one. And how could it not be after arguably Trevor's best performance of the year, coming off his other best performance of the year? And it's awesome to see the offense finally starting to click with Trevor and Cohen. I think it starts with the quarterback. I think it ends with the quarterback. You can point to the offensive line, the receivers, and the running back. But at the end of the day, the offense is run by the quarterback and his relationship with the play caller. And you can just really tell that he looks confident in the game plan, confident in the game, in the play calls, and how he makes checks at the line of scrimmage. And just the relationship with him and Liam Cohen, I think you could see earlier in the year, it felt like Cohen was pissed at Trevor for everything. That's just what the camera catches, but I mean, it's just what we see. And even up to the Cardinals game, we saw some stuff too. But I mean, the last 2 games, it's literally been Cohen's all smiles with Trevor and just yeah, you, and pushing him and saying good job and calling him out on the post game a lot recently, which I feel like, one we never saw with Doug Peterson. I feel like he refused to give Trevor credit for some reason. And earlier in the season, it was kind of maybe some growing pains with the new system and everything. But right now, it just seems like Cohen has a lot of trust in Trevor. Trevor's trusting himself, trusting the receivers, trusting the line, and playing his best football. And as much as Jacoby Myers has changed this offense, and a huge credit to him for coming in middle of the season and being as reliable as they come in the pass game, I think we also need to give Trevor his flowers for 2 weeks in a row of mistake-free football. That's always been the biggest thing about Trevor, is that can he just limit those boneheaded mistakes? And when he does, he's legitimately top 10, top 5 quarterback, in my opinion. It's always been that way. He always makes all the crazy throws and can fit it into tight windows and can run the offense, but he'll just have 2 or 3 plays a game where you're like, what are you doing, man? And the last 2 weeks, really ever since that third interception in the Cardinals game 3 weeks ago, it's like a different Trevor has come on. Now, are the defenses the best he's playing against? Probably not, but even against bad defenses, Trevor would still make dumb interceptions. So I think he's really taken the coaching well, really absorbed the offense. Doesn't matter the elements. He's continuing to let it rip. Some of the throws he made in that game were outstanding. Some stuff that you see from only Josh Allen and Mahomes, and Burrow. So I think it's really cool to have that, and it's really cool that something we've seen in Trevor's career is that this is usually when he's playing the best football of his career. If he's not hurt, obviously. If he's healthy, he usually plays his best football later in the season. It happened in 2022 when he got hot and started putting on some kind of elite performances down that stretch and going into the playoffs. And this is a game where elite Trevor had to show up for the Jaguars to kind of make their mark, and I think he did. This should excite everyone for the upcoming slate of games, because it's not like we're facing the best defenses in the NFL besides the Broncos, obviously. We have a few defenses coming up that can really be carved up. And though, Trevor's never really a stat merchant, he's not a fantasy football quarterback. He's never going to, or not never, but he rarely has a game like 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, or something like that. And usually if he does have a game like that, it's usually with 3 interceptions as well, or the Jaguars are in a blowout or something. So what he did on Sunday is right where we want, like the last 2 games, is right where we want Trevor to live at. Around 200, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That is the perfect Trevor Lawrence stat line, in my opinion. But either way, yeah, the command of the offense, throws he had in this game, the trust in the receivers. I think having the wristband helped out so much too, keeping those delay of games off the board. I think you can see that decision was, I think, paramount also in helping this offense look more smoother, because they aren't snapping the ball with 1 second left every single play, especially in the red zone and on third downs. You can tell they said that's what the wristband was for those specific instances, because they would always get in that instance and then they would have a delay of game and bring it back. Now we still have to clean up a lot of the false starts and stuff, and Trevor, even with a lot of the injuries to the offense, and the offense maybe not looking like we thought it would going into the year, I think has really started to elevate the team. No Parker Washington in this game, I thought could have been more of a struggle on offense to kind of move the ball. But I think Trevor elevating his game and giving guys like BTJ and Tim Patrick the opportunities and the trust to make the big plays was something we have seen out of Trevor the last few games. And regardless who's playing, we're seeing a quarterback that's elevating his team. Another big knock on Trevor. So that's something we've been hoping Trevor could turn into, someone who elevates his game, elevates the players around him, is clutch, and makes mistake-free football. And right now he's playing like that. So no complaints there. It's still a long way to go, and I don't even think we've really even seen his ceiling yet. But he's getting hot at the right time, and that's just something that great QBs do at this time. Finally, he has another chance to show that he can be that again this year. But not everything was amazing in this game, so let's get into some of the negatives before we move off of this Colts game and go around the league. Honestly, there's not a lot that I can dig up besides the biggest one that still haunts this team on a consistent basis, and that I really don't know how it can even be fixed at this point of the year, and that's penalties. I mean, it's so easy to just be like, oh, just be disciplined. But, like, we know it's just like the Jaguars are just a little undisciplined. It's not really much to say. I mean, we've had a handful of games where they keep the penalties to a minimum, but another 8 penalties for 64 yards. Some really killer ones, especially on defense, on third downs. Not getting off the field was really killer. Thankfully, they were able to overcome that. The offense was able to overcome some false starts, but some of the penalties were definitely some backbreakers. The most egregious one, in my opinion, and something I've seen so much, is Mason Smith. Twice now this year that he's been tricked on the hard count and gone offsides to give the team like a first down. And I'm at that point where Mason Smith, where I feel like I'm good with him just kind of being on the bench, only putting him in on some situations, because he's not a situational master, as they like to say. To not understand the situation that badly and to make that mistake twice, in almost, I think it might have been 2 weeks in a row, or I can't remember if it was in Arizona and now, but I really did have high expectations, I think, for Mason Smith being a second-round pick at a very premium position that the Jaguars haven't had good play out of for a long time. Armstead's been doing actually really good this year, surprisingly, but Jaguars haven't had that guy up the middle to create chaos since Malik Jackson, really. And I know there was a lot of hype around him this year to kind of take that leap, but I kind of fear that he might be a bulky holdover that ends up being replaced by a Gladstone special 5th-round pick or something next year. But thankfully, other players like Austin Johnson, Matt Dickerson have filled in the role pretty nicely. Pretty good pickups, honestly. And then my only other negative was special teams on kickoffs. I know it's kind of a small thing, but it is just a little frustrating when you see the other team consistently get it out to the 30 or 40-yard line on kickoffs. Meanwhile, we're getting it around maybe the 20, 25 or something. It's been a little hit and miss this year on special teams. There have been some games where they dominate, and Tootin and Parker Washington or whoever's back there or Austin Trammell is like carrying it out to the 40 or 50. We've had some really clutch times in the kickoffs, but there are some games where it's pretty rough. So I'd like to see a little more consistency from that area on special teams, but it's hard to really complain when you just embarrass a division opponent and simultaneously watch their promising season end before your eyes. So which is going to bring me to the rest of the AFC South. We'll go through that really quick. I was going to start off with the Texans this time. They beat the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, really kind of beat the Chiefs handily, and the Chiefs look miserable, honestly. I mean, they don't even look like a good team this year, which is crazy to think about, but right now they're 6-7, and they're not going to make the playoffs. I don't think. I mean, this is such a weird year in the AFC where 10-7 might not make it. I think you legitimately have to get 11 to guarantee a playoff berth. Meanwhile, the Texans, I think, continue to strike fear in the rest of the AFC because of their defense. Stroud's back in full swing, playing pretty well. The offense has kind of hit a bit of a rhythm with some of the receivers stepping up, like Higgins. And, I find it highly likely that the Texans, with how good their defense is, their strength of schedule coming up, will make the playoffs. They're either going to go 11-6 or possibly even 12-5. They have a real shot to win all 4 of their upcoming games. The only games where I do see them maybe losing, maybe they get a trap game in the Cardinals next week, or they're going on the road to the Chargers. Maybe the Chargers have found some life after that win against the Eagles, and maybe they drop one there, which is crazy just considering that they started off 0-3 and that they might end the season at 12-5 and possibly win the division over the Jags if the Jaguars don't take care of business, but I think they will. But, should the Jags fans worry about losing the division to the Texans? I think that's a question a lot of people might be asking, like, oh no, we might not win the division, but I think we shouldn't be worried at all about that, because I think the Jaguars have put themselves in the driver's seat and control their own destiny. If the Jaguars just take care of the games that are left on their schedule, the winnable games on their schedule, I think they can win the division, and they deserve to win the division if they do that. If they do slip up and end up 11-6 or something like that, and Houston gets a tiebreaker, or maybe they win 12 and then they win the division, or because of a tiebreaker of common games or whatever it is right now, they deserve to win the division. Honestly, hats off to them. If the Houston Texans win more games than the Jaguars, they deserve the division, and we as Jags fans should be thankful just to be in the playoffs or be in double-digit wins with how the season has gone and what the expectations were to start the year. And which is crazy, because when's the last time that you could say like an AFC South team could go 12-5 and still lose the division race? It is kind of crazy though, but I do believe that the Texans would have the tiebreaker if the Jaguars and the Texans both go 12-5. So really, if the Jaguars want to win the division, the Texans need to lose one more game, and the Jaguars really need to win out, basically. The Jaguars need to have more wins than the Texans to win the division. I think that's the only way, I think. Unless the Texans lose a conference game or something. I don't know. It's pretty complicated, but just know, to make it simple, Jaguars need to win more than the Texans. I don't think they win the tiebreaker there. Well, I think they'd be tied in division race too, so I think it's the whole common games thing. If you do make it to the playoffs, you most likely would be the 5 seed if you don't win the division, play a mid Steelers or Ravens team, or you could be the 6th seed and face the Texans on the road. And honestly, if I'm the Jags, I think I take either one right now. With how everything is right now, I think the Jaguars can beat the Steelers on the road or beat the Texans on the road. They were up 19 points in the 4th quarter. As long as they just don't blow it at the end, which I don't think they will, I think they have a really good shot to win any of those games they go on the road. The only road team I think I probably wouldn't want to face in the playoffs is Denver, just because it's a tough place to play and they have a great defense. But I think everyone else, even the Patriots, if they're the number one seed, I think I could see the Jaguars going in there and winning as well. But I think we got to be careful not to get too greedy. I think maybe people might be at the chance, or people might be at the point now where if the Jaguars don't win the division, then the season's lost. We failed. It's like no. Remember where we were. Remember who we are. Where we started the year. If the Jaguars get to double-digit wins, 10, 11, 12 wins, I think that's a huge win. Whether they win the division, whether they make the playoffs, even if somehow they don't make the playoffs, you're like 11-6 and you don't make the playoffs. That's just a bad luck year, and that's just how weird the year is right now. But I think 11-6 right now is the floor. I know I said 10-7 last week was the floor, but I think given the schedule, there's no reason why you shouldn't beat the Jets or the Titans coming up. But they've already exceeded my expectations for this year. I really do think the Jaguars have a chance to make a run here. We all should know that the playoff runs shouldn't be taken for granted either. I remember in 2017 and 2022 losing those playoff games in kind of the heartbreaking fashion that they did, but I was still excited because it was like, don't worry, next year we're going to build off this and make a Super Bowl run, only to be let down by the next year and have a terrible year. So when the stars align for a special year, I do believe you need to make the most of it. But I do believe that this regime, I think they really can be special, and I think they can have multiple years of success. I don't foresee, barring injury, of course, I don't foresee in the next 3 years the Jaguars becoming a bottom feeder again with Liam Cohen, with the talent that they have on this team. I don't see that much of a regression. Now, things change year to year. You get a new schedule. You play tougher opponents, and you can maybe not make the playoffs the next year or even have a losing record. But I think the days of, okay, we had a good season, and then the next season you end up getting 4 wins, I think that should be over, barring like a complete rebuild. And I see a lot to build off of. So I'm happy the Jaguars just making the playoffs and hopefully making some noise in those playoffs. I think there's no reason not to expect the Jaguars to win the next 3 out of 4, make it to 12-5. I know I said, floor 11-6 at this point, but 12-5, they really should be at least 12-5, and they do have a shot to be 13-4. Whether that's enough, 13-4 is definitely enough to win the division, but whether 12-5 is enough to win the division will be up to the Texans. I'm definitely not going to bank on 13-4 though. It's the NFL. I think winning 8 in a row is extremely difficult to do. It's the same reason I don't really fully believe the Texans are going to win the rest of their schedule and win 9 games in a row, which would just be insane with, an offense that really isn't the best. Yes, they have number 1 defense, but it's the NFL. This isn't college. I think, that's just football. Somebody's going to slip up. Somebody's not going to play their best ball, whether that's the Texans or the Jags or both. They could both lose 2 games in the next 4, and I would be very surprised if that happened, but I wouldn't be absolutely shocked. We've seen crazier things in the NFL. So it's fun that at least there is a race. It's fun that we could possibly see it all come down to the end, and hopefully the Jaguars come out on top. I think they will. I really think they can. But meanwhile, other areas of the AFC, the Titans somehow beat the Browns. Good for them. Still the worst team in the league, and surprisingly, not too far behind them is the Indianapolis Colts. Jags fans, we've been there to what the Colts are going through. It sucks what happened to them. I'm not saying we give sympathy. They're a division rival, and like I said, we've been there. We know that pain. Watching your quarterback get hurt out for the season right before your very eyes, or the season being, gone before your very eyes. I do know how cocky Colts fans were to start the year, and I understand why. They were off 7-1 and in an awesome position, and were playing incredible historic levels of offense, and then see it all crash and burn in the last 4 weeks, and then it all culminating and being in the place where you can't win the last 11 years in Jacksonville. To have a devastating loss like that just sucks. Given their schedule, I think they're done. I don't know they win a single game the rest of the year. I'm not sure. I mean, can Riley Leonard come in and save the day? Can Anthony Richardson come off of IR and save the day? Can grandpa Phillip Rivers at 44 years old to come off the practice squad and save the day? I'm not sure. But, I mean, how can the Colts put all their chips in on Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor to, be healthy all year, given their injury history? And then to trot Daniel Jones out there on a broken leg and expect everything just to be okay? In my opinion, that's another huge blunder from what I think is one of the most underrated GMs in all of football, Chris Ballard. I think that guy gets so much praise for this awesome team builder and all this stuff when he hasn't gotten the quarterback right in 10 years or over 10 years or whatever since Andrew Luck left, or almost 10 years. And Daniel Jones really saved his ass, or it looked like he was going to save his ass, but then now he's hurt, and now what, But anyways, that's maybe another video. I'd love to do a Chris Ballard video after the Colts maybe crash and burn this season. I'd love to kind of go in on him because I think he's just so overrated in my opinion. What have the Colts actually done? They've done nothing. Every team in the AFC South has won 2 division titles since he's taken over. But anyways, that Week 17 game in Indy on the road for the Jags, I think it's gotten a whole lot more winnable, and I expect the Jaguars to win that game now. But we've talked it so much, playoff picture, the upcoming schedule for the Jaguars. Will they win 2, 3, 4? If they get in, will they be the 2 seed, the 1 seed? I think it's easy to kind of get ahead of ourselves and act like, it's a given that they're going to win all of their games. But just remember, it's the NFL. It's a tough league. Somehow the Saints beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa in the middle of the Bucs being in a huge playoff race with the Panthers. So crazy things just happen. But I'm thankful and I'm confident in Liam Cohen that I don't think he'll take this for granted. And I think he's going to have our guys ready to play. But it is kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy just to be in the position, and I think it's hard not to look ahead and get excited for potentially a 12-win team in Jacksonville. Last time the Jaguars had 12 wins was 2007. I was 8 years old at the time. I for one can't predict the Jaguars to win all 4 remaining games on their schedule. That's just not how the NFL works, and not how the Jaguars work in my brain. I just can't really wrap my head around that the Jaguars might have an 8-game winning streak going to the playoffs. That's just kind of crazy for me to think about, but it is fun. So to see the Jaguars in the mix, obviously the 3 seed. Given that the Broncos do play the Packers next week, if the Broncos do lose that game, I really think that Week 17 or Week 16 matchup with the Broncos could be a battle for the 2 seed. I don't think they're catching the Patriots in the 1 seed just because how weak their schedule is, unless something crazy happens. But I would love just for the Jaguars to be in the playoffs. If they win the division, that's even better. And I think they're in the driver's seat to do so. But I would also not be shocked if Houston wins out and the Jaguars get the 5th or 6th seed. No big deal. We'll go on the road. I don't care. But before you can get to that point, it starts at this week, Week 15. And so let's get into this matchup with the New York Jets. You can't talk about winning the division. You can't talk about making the playoffs if you don't win the games on the schedule that you are supposed to win that work favorably for you. I think this is a game that I think the Jaguars should not take lightly. I know that they aren't. I know that Baselli's mentality that this game is the most important game in franchise history is always the next game. But I feel confident because I think the big test for a game like this was against the Titans 2 weeks ago. I think they proved to me that they can handle lesser opponents, not let it turn into a trap game. Because of how they fared on the road against bad teams like the Cardinals, like the Raiders, I was worried about that game, but they took care of business in that game very handily. It's clear that I think this is a kind of a different team. I think that Texans lost in the 4th quarter, and I think that gritty win in Arizona really kind of turned this whole team around. Also, that blowout win against the Chargers, which is looking better by the day too, as the Chargers are now 9-4. I just think everything right now is clicking for the Jags on both sides of the ball, and I think there is no reason to look ahead on any other games on the schedule if you're the Jags, because they just need to keep winning every single game. If they win every single game, they're in the playoffs at the number 2 or 3 seed. So it starts this week against a very, very bad New York Jets team who may possibly be on their 3rd-string quarterback. We don't know right now who's going to be the Jets quarterback. This is Tuesday morning at the time of filming this, but honestly, it shouldn't matter. After watching the highlights back of them versus the Dolphins, it's clear that the Jets they're phoning it in. They're just getting their game check. They're just, they're just looking for the season to end at this point. This miserable season for them. Should not be a competitive game, honestly, with everything the Jaguars have to play for and everything the Jets don't have to play for. I know we've seen before when teams maybe don't have anything to play for, crazy things happen, and crazier things have happened in this league. But let's get into the game. But first, let's get into some injury news for the Jaguars. Let's be real, the Jaguars never say anything about their injuries, even on the injury report. It doesn't even matter because we're really not going to find out until like 10 minutes before game time. But good news is that they do look to be getting a little healthier, possibly at full strength if we get back Parker, Walker-Little, and Dewey Wingert back this week in full. Right now, it's not clear if they will suit up on Sunday, but usually, depending on the concussion protocol, it usually lasts about a week. So I think we can possibly expect both to be back. As for Parker Washington, it looked like he was about to come back last week. He was practicing on Friday. I think they just erred on the side of caution, keep him out the Colts game. They could do the same thing this week if they just want to kind of save him down the stretch for the Broncos, since the Jaguars are in prime position for the playoffs, and maybe you don't need full strength offense against this team. But I think I would expect that he'll be back, especially knowing Parker Washington. I think he's just a guy that wants to play. Another question is if Walker-Little does come back, does he come back to the lineup? Because we saw Cole Van Lennon come in there and honestly perform better than Walker-Little has this year. I think if Walker-Little is healthy, I do think they start him. Not maybe because he's better than Cole Van Lennon, but I think Cole Van Lennon has a lot more versatility on the offensive line. So, in case, God forbid, one of our guards or something goes down, or anybody really, Cole Van Lennon has proved that he can step in there and play basically any position on the offensive line. So maybe they want to keep him on reserve in case of that to be happened. So that's what I think will happen, but I will not be surprised at all if he's back in the starting lineup as the starting left tackle after his performance in the last 2 weeks. Also, getting Dewey back would actually be really awesome to finally see our secondary at full strength. Something that we haven't had since the bye week. I mean, Eric Murray's been dealing with injuries since before the bye week. He went out in the Texans game. Jordan Lewis went out in the Raiders game. So we finally got Lewis and Eric Murray back, and now we just get Dewey back in the full swing. Now we have our full secondary and possibly our full defensive line as well. So that'd be awesome to see the Jaguars kind of get back full strength towards the end of the year. On the Jets side, there isn't really too much to speak of besides the quarterback situation. I think it's going to be Tyrod Taylor, but if not, some guy named Brady Cook will be out there. Okay. Other than that, Garrett Wilson is eligible to come back off IR this week, but I think it's probably doubtful that he gives it a go given the Jets situation. They probably don't want to rupture anything even more, but even if he does, that's not a big deal either. Other than that, they do have a few injuries to their linebackers in secondary, but there aren't many names on here that I recognize anyways, so I don't really think it should affect the game too much. Jaguars just take care of business. So let's break down really quick Jaguars offense versus Jets defense. I think this is a perfect storm for a big day for the Jaguars offense. I think, the Jets traded away their two best players on defense, Quinn Williams and Sauce Gardner. This season, they've already kind of given up, and that defense just can be absolutely shredded as the Dolphins did last week. And the only thing that really scares me even a little bit on this team is their front seven. Their edges, Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson, I think are pretty solid up-and-coming pass rushers, but I don't really see them as like game wreckers as you would Max Crosby or the guys in Houston that they got. And they also have a duo of some pretty solid linebackers in Sherwood and Quincy Williams. But, where they really have issues, though, are up front, in the middle at defensive tackle, and in the secondary just in general. I think they are one of the worst teams in the NFL against the rush, and I think you do that, you set a play action pass down the field against these corners, against these safeties. Jets are rated actually pretty decently well in pass coverage, surprisingly, top 10 passing defense, but that might have been maybe skewed from before all of those trades. But the defense in general is one of the worst in the league. So my key to the game is simple. Really simple. Just take care of business. Run the ball. ETN. Big game. Handle the business up front. You're better. You're more physical than the Jets on offensive line versus defensive line. That should show every snap on Sunday. If the Jets do sell out to stop the run, I'm fully confident in Trevor's command of the offense and the trust he has as wide receivers. Check out of the play and hit him over the top. I think I could see another big game for BTJ as they continue to get him more involved and get his confidence rolling. Maybe get some of those plays back that we could have had in the first half of the year. I think Trevor's going to play efficiently, and I think he's going to play plenty well enough to win the game. Moving on to the defense for the Jets offense, I think things could be a little tricky given the Jets' weapons. None of them really scare me outside of Breece Hall, the running back, or if Garrett Wilson maybe plays. I think they have what I believe is a really solid offensive line, led by their young stud tackles Fashanu and Membu. The key to this game, off on the defense, I think will just be kind of showing dominance, stopping the run as they've done all season. Continue that, and there should be no reason we see anything more than a single-digit performance, honestly, on the scoreboard, and possibly a few more turnovers. I could see that as well. In reality, the only thing that scares me on this game on the defensive side is maybe just, backup quarterbacks playing against the Jags. Maybe they get a little bit momentum, they're just flinging it around. But if Taylor plays, Tyrod Taylor, though he's a backup, I think he is someone who can run an offense and play pretty smart. Knowing how desperate the Jets do play sometimes, you could expect some trick plays. You could expect a fake punt or two, something to kind of steal a possession, something to just kind of cause chaos for the Jags in this game. So just don't let them beat you with that, or if something like that does happen, just bend, don't break. Don't let them, cause a crazy turnover or steal possessions and get touchdowns out of it. None of their skill positions on that team scare me, like I said, outside of Breece Hall, and even he isn't having anything special of a year. If you can shut down Jonathan Taylor, you can shut down Breece Hall. If you can shut down the Chargers receivers, you can shut down Garrett Wilson and a bunch of wide receiver threes. And if somehow Justin Fields does play this week, I don't expect much from him either. Really, the Jets have been basically just putrid almost all year on offense, so I don't expect much from them. On X factors on offense, I'm going to go with ETN. I think this is the game where potentially ETN goes over that 1,000 yards, gets his third 1,000-yard season. I think the Jags kind of lean on him, establish dominance in the run game, and ETN feast off that. I think they could get Tootin involved as well. Maybe this is a game where it's like, hey, maybe we'll rest ETN a little bit. We can get Tootin involved and give him some confidence going into the rest of the year. But I think just lean on who's been consistent. Lean on ETN. Let him have another big game. Give the Jags every reason to bring him back next year. I think I'm on that train right now with ETN, but we'll see. On the defense, I'm going to go with Trayvon Walker. I think he's battled a lot of injuries this year, but when he's back, when he's in the defense, the run game and the pass defense are just that much better. I think he's going to have his hands full with Membu. He's a really good rookie tackle. If he can make his presence felt off the edge in the run of the pass game, the Jags should have a really big day on defense. So score prediction here. I know there's a lot of scary things that could happen when you face a team with nothing to lose like the Jets, when you're fighting for playoff seedings and division race, but let's face it, Jaguars should have no problem in this game. They should win this game, and I think they do win this game quick, decisive, 28-17. That's my score prediction. I think the Jaguars establish a dominant early lead, maybe make it 28-10, and then last minute there's a garbage time touchdown or something to get the Jets to 17. I do maybe worry about Aaron Glenn pulling out some crazy defensive coverages, or like I said, some trick plays or something. But I think Liam Cohen's going to have his guys ready to play with an edge like they have all year. I think the Jaguars match up really well against a bad team. And though I usually hate matchups like this where the Jaguars are supposed to win against a bad team because just crazy things always seem to happen, I don't think there's anything to worry about in this game. And I'm not, especially at home. I think everyone go out and support the team, pack the bank, get loud, enjoy the Jags getting to double-digit wins for the first time since 2017, for the first time in almost a decade. Isn't that nice to hear? So we got a long way to go still, 4 games left, and then possibly more. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Take care of business this week. get to 10 wins and enjoy a nice first week of December. Or is this the second week? Second week of December. Anyways, let me know what you think is going to happen in the comments. Give me your score predictions, what you're thinking about the Jags so far. As always, stay tuned for more Jags Japan content. Stay tuned for the post-game show after the game that I do every week. Go Jags, and I'll see you later.